All right, we are back with another reaction here to Epic History TV's Napoleon in Italy. This one is part 2, Battle of Castiglione. I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. But I'm told this is supposed to be pretty hype. So yeah, I'm excited to see what keeps happening in Italy here and, you know, what Napoleon can accomplish here in these campaigns. So I think I might do also the third part today. I have some extra time today, so I might record another one and I'll post this one today at some point, and then the other one maybe later tonight or early tomorrow. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm excited, so let's get started. Again, thank you to Epic History TV and PMF Productions and everybody who works for that channel. As always, in the description, their channel will be linked. Go subscribe to them if you haven't. They have an insane, just an absolutely insane amount of videos on a bunch of different historical things, especially Napoleon. I noticed there were so many Napoleon videos on here, which for someone like me who wants to learn, I'm all for that. So yeah, and these guys do an amazing job with the maps, with the music, the narrator. He's amazing. And everybody who is a Patreon to Epic History TV, thank you as well, because it helps them out, and then they can make this awesome content, and we get to see it and learn.
In 1796, at the height of the French Revolutionary Wars, a young French general took charge of a ragged, demoralized army in northern Italy. It was his first command. Many expected him to fail. Instead, in just 1 month, he won his first brilliant campaign.
Right.
With astonishing self-confidence, boldness and energy, he led his army to victory after victory, transforming the war in Europe, winning praise from a grateful republic, and forging a legend. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte's first campaign, and the dawn of a new age.
I'm ready. Here it is, part 2.
May 1796. The French Revolutionary Wars have entered their 5th year. And on what most consider to be a secondary front, there has been a stunning development. A 26-year-old general of the French Republic, Napoleon Bonaparte, has waged a lightning campaign across northern Italy, defeating the Kingdom of Piedmont-Sardinia and driving the Austrians across Lombardy.
As we saw in the previous video, to me that was amazing, and some people have commented too about the speed of his army and on top of that, the speed of his decision making. And there's something to be said about when you make a decision, following through with it. So as we can see in the last video, Napoleon kind of just showing that off right off the bat.
2,000 Austrian troops remain holed up in Milan's citadel, but they cannot prevent his triumphal entry into the city on the 15th of May. Now the French general holds court at the Palazzo Serbelloni, issuing decrees on behalf of the Directory in Paris, while his troops enjoy several days' rest. Lombardy is to be reorganized as a French client state, known as the Lombardic Republic. Political and economic reforms sweep away the old Austrian state, to the delight of Italian intellectuals in cities like Milan.
Really?
But the French also demand 20 million francs to help pay for the war.
Oh boy.
While their troops requisition vast quantities of food, horses, cattle, and boots. Most inflammatory are their attacks on the property and dignity of the Catholic Church, which enrage Italian priests and peasants, and are a gift to anti-French propagandists. On the 23rd of May, as Napoleon's troops set off in pursuit of the Austrians, revolt breaks out in Pavia. The next day, there are riots in Milan. Napoleon races back to the city, where order is soon restored. But on the road to Pavia, at Binasco, he encounters 1,000 armed rebels. Colonel Lannes' grenadiers rout the peasants, killing 100 and burning the village.
Wow.
A terrible example, which will be effective, Napoleon writes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, what do, you know? Obviously, you can't have revolts happening under your new rule. I understand that completely. But at the same time, like the narrator was saying here, the propaganda probably helped allies a lot write about Napoleon, accusing him probably of being a tyrant or, barbaric or murderous or whatever. So, there's always a double-edged sword here. It's like you can't have revolts happening behind your lines and in a territory that you just recently conquered. But you also have to be wary of how it's going to be seen if you were to take down, as exampled here, 1,000 peasants who had risen up against you. Of course, they didn't really have a chance. The French army is an organized, actual state army, and they're just kind of civilians. But, it is what it is, I guess. And, Napoleon's probably used to being called certain names. I'm sure over his career, he'll be called worse things, so.
Pavia is retaken the next day with little opposition. A score of ringleaders, including several priests, are shot.
Wow.
Hundreds of hostages are taken from prominent local families to ensure future cooperation. Napoleon resumes his advance east. His army now organized into 4 divisions: Kilmain's advance guard, Augereau, Massena, and Serrurier. General Berlioz's Austrian army holds the line of the Mincio River, with Lake Garda on his right and the great fortress of Mantua on his left. This, together with the fortresses at Peschiera, Verona, and Lagnago, forms the famous quadrilateral, 4 bastions that cement Austria's grip on northern Italy. But once more, Beaulieu can't get a read on Napoleon's movements. He scatters his troops, trying to defend 4 potential crossing points, and is further distracted by fake preparations to cross Lake Garda by boat. In fact,
Wow.
Napoleon has decided to cross the Mincio at Borghetto. And when Kilmain's advance guard arrives, they find the bridge defended by a single battalion of infantry and handful of hussars. The Austrians are soon driven back, but a sudden counterattack nearly bags General Bonaparte himself.
Wow.
A possibly dramatized account has him hopping over fences with one boot on to evade the hussars.
Wow.
This lucky escape leads to the formation of an elite cavalry detachment to act as Napoleon's personal escort. They are named the Compagnie des Guides à Cheval. Their commander is a young cavalry captain named Jean-Baptiste Bessières.
Okay.
In time, this unit will become the famous Chasseurs à Cheval of the Imperial Guard, the Emperor's ever-present bodyguard on campaign.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, at this time, did other generals or like commanders have their like personal bodyguard? Or was this just like a Napoleon thing? I was kind of wondering that the last video too. Obviously, if you have like 20,000 troops in your army, let's say, and the commander is captured, do those 20,000 just give up, or like is there? I'm assuming there's sort of a chain of command, right? But someone like Napoleon, if and now that he has a bodyguard, but if he were to be captured or killed, I mean, I suppose that would be a big morale shock to the troops, but it's not like they couldn't fight on, right? They would have other leaders to follow without Napoleon. But it's interesting to see. If he has his own bodyguard and nobody else does, that's very interesting because it reminds me of like the Roman times, like the Praetorian Guard established to protect the Roman emperors, and knowing obviously that Napoleon does become emperor eventually. This is kind of like his own little Praetorian, I guess.
This video is sponsored by Enlisted, the unique World War II first-person shooter in which you lead your squad into battle in a variety of major campaigns, from Barbarossa to the streets of Berlin. Each member has his role to play.
I'm excited to see more of the Italy thing, but as I was saying, very interesting that he has his own bodyguard. It must be people he trusts highly, I would suspect, because you don't want just any old Joe Schmo guarding you.
Play Enlisted now on PC, Xbox, or PlayStation using the link in our video description and get a free bonus pack including multiple weapons.
Go help them out in their ad sponsors too, if you ever see one on these guys.
Video.
I have to provide for the defense of Mantua, the key to Italy. General Bolio? Again, sorry. Bolio? Austrian commander in Italy. I like that picture in the background. That's awesome. Yeah, the Austrians are kind of in a tough spot here. They spread out their forces a lot, and, I guess that was what they thought they needed to do, and now Napoleon's kind of concentrated his forces, so we'll see what happens.
Taken by surprise by the crossing at Borghetto, Bolio begins a withdrawal to a new defensive line in the Adige Valley. However, at Mantua, he leaves behind a reinforced garrison, well supplied and ready to withstand a siege of at least 2 months.
Wow.
Napoleon cannot bypass Mantua. Its garrison is too powerful. But the fortress city will be a tough nut to crack. Its old walls surrounded on 3 sides by a lake, and on the other by malarial marshland.
Ugh.
The most unhealthy place in Italy, Napoleon tells the Directory.
That's a crazy looking fort.
His biggest problem is his lack of heavy siege artillery. Most of these guns are in Milan, bombarding the Austrians, still holed up in the citadel. More guns were supposed to arrive by sea, but have been intercepted by British warships, commanded by a certain Commodore Horatio Nelson.
I've heard of him. Yeah, he's very famous.
Since April, Napoleon has launched 3 successful offensives, marched more than 200 miles, and won 10 battles. But finally, outside the walls of Mantua, he is brought to a halt. And the demands on his limited force are growing. He must maintain the siege of Mantua, even though its guns outnumber his own and no direct assault can be made. He must protect his lines of communication back to France and guard against further revolt in Lombardy. And he must be ready to face the Austrians, who are receiving reinforcements from Germany and will soon counterattack.
Oh boy.
To add to his problems, the French Directory demands that he lead an expedition to central and southern Italy. He's to threaten military occupation unless these states cough up huge sums to help fund the French war effort.
I'm busy, man. I can't go to Italy, right? Like central Italy. Don't you see I'm waging a war in northern Italy for you? I guess I shouldn't be surprised because typically leaders, and I know the Directory is 5 people, right? It's like 5, I don't know if it's like senators or whoever they are. But sometimes it's like, I'm already doing all I can for you, and now you want me to do something else. Like, I'm assuming Napoleon will we'll figure out a way to make this happen. But it's just funny. Some things never change, I guess.
Napoleon vehemently opposes the idea.
Yeah.
Marching troops the length of Italy in high summer, he warns, will end in sickness and death.
Yep.
Fortunately, strong words alone persuade Naples to sign an armistice.
Wow.
And in the end, Napoleon doesn't even have to go as far as Rome. The French march through the Duchy of Modena, the Papal States, and the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, raising more than 40 million francs in tribute from states that are powerless to resist.
That's crazy.
Napoleon dines in Florence with the Grand Duke before returning to Milan. There he is reunited with his wife, Josephine, who's arrived from Paris, discreetly accompanied by her new lover.
What the? Yo, hold up.
Napoleon...
Okay, that was not what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting his wife to show up, let alone show up with, I guess, the person she has having an affair with? Or did Napoleon know? Or was it like an open relationship? I don't know. I don't know anything about romance back in those times. I don't know if that was like common. That was weird. But going back to, marching through kind of central Italy, they didn't go into it very much, but did the people of like Tuscany and all those kind of smaller little areas, did they care? Or were they like pro-French or anti-French, or were they just kind of like they had to obey anyway? Because it's almost like Napoleon, or like the French, I don't know if Napoleon himself, but the French were like, hey, pay us like a fee and we won't attack you, kind of thing. I forgot like an indemnity or something, or what is that the word? But it's like, okay, there was no resistance. They just marched through, took the money, had a little dinner, met with the Grand Duke. Everybody's high-fiving, cheersing, and then he goes back to Milan, where he meets up with his wife, who brought her lover. What a wild, just string of sentences.
Does not linger in Milan. Its citadel has finally fallen, freeing up his siege guns. His troops have seized another 150 guns from the forts of central Italy. Napoleon can now make serious plans to take Mantua, and he has no time to lose. In the Tyrol, the reinforced Austrian army is beginning to stir, under a new commander. Berlioz is gone. Now, 72-year-old Field Marshal Count von Wurmser is in command.
72.
A courageous cavalryman, vigorous beyond his years, and determined to avenge Austrian defeats in Italy.
The storm is beginning to gather. Napoleon Bonaparte, 2nd July, 1796. Yeah. Just, again, not much to say other than the other commanders seem very old, as stated, but it seemed like, I guess he had a little bit more stamina than the other guy, who was, I think, just almost the same age. So we'll see what the Austrians can do now that they got reinforcements.
Since crossing the Mincio, Napoleon has reorganized and redeployed his forces. General Massena's division is near Rivoli, watching the road to the Tyrol. Two of his brigades, under General Sorre, are at Salo, watching the western side of Lake Garda. General Despinois' division is in support at Peschiera. General Augereau's division is around Legnago, watching the eastern approaches, while Kilmain's cavalry mounts patrols. General Serrurier's division carries out the siege of Mantua itself.
Okay.
But Napoleon's hopes for a rapid conclusion to the siege are in vain. The Austrian garrison conducts a skillful and active defense, raiding French entrenchments and seizing supplies.
What?
Murat, recently promoted to brigadier general, plans to lead a group of men in Austrian uniform across the lake at night to take the guards by surprise. But the operation's abandoned when the water level suddenly drops. The French step up their bombardment of the city, firing more than 1,000 cannonballs and mortar shells in one 6-hour period. Mantua is being battered to pieces, but its walls are not yet breached. Napoleon is out of time. Field Marshal Wurmser is finally marching to Mantua's aid. He has divided his army into 4 columns. 2 central columns are advancing down the Adige Valley directly towards Mantua. Another column to the east is making a wide flanking march, while a 4th column, under General Kostanovic, advances down the western shore of Lake Garda, planning to seize Brescia and cut Napoleon's line of retreat. Massena comes under heavy attack and, severely outnumbered, abandons Rivoli and begins a fighting retreat. As soon as the news reaches Napoleon, he races to Castelnuovo, ordering Augereau, Despinois and Kilmaine to join him as fast as possible. But suddenly, it is Kostanovic's column that's emerging as the greatest threat. General Saue's troops at Salo are heavily outnumbered. They put up a stiff resistance, but are forced to withdraw. The next day, Austrian troops surprise the French at Brescia. They take the town, as well as an army hospital containing 2,000 French sick and wounded. Even Napoleon's wife, Josephine, en route to Brescia, is nearly captured in the chaos. Wurmser has wrong-footed Napoleon. Already outnumbered, he's lost 5,000 casualties. His left flank is in tatters, and there's a real possibility he may be encircled. It's the greatest crisis he has faced as an army commander, and will force him to make an agonizing decision.
I gotta give it to the Austrians, though. Like, so far in the videos we watched, they haven't really done much that seems positive. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, or like, flame them or anything. I was just saying they didn't battle very well, and they didn't want to work with the Piedmontese people, and they just are kind of slow and just not really good at fighting. But now it seems like they kind of have the element of surprise, just swarming out of the mountains from all sorts of directions. Every moment is precious. The enemy has broken through our line in 3 places. Napoleon to General Augereau, 30th July 1796. Augereau. Yeah, like I was just saying a second ago. The Austrians are kind of doing what they're supposed to do, I suppose. They're fighting back, but they're also doing it on multiple fronts.
On the 31st of July, after 2 months of blood, sweat and sacrifice, General Serrurier is ordered to abandon the siege of Mantua. He is to send 2 of his brigades to reinforce Massena and Augereau, and withdraw with the rest of his troops to guard the army's line of retreat. 179 guns, plus ammunition and supplies which cannot be moved, are to be buried or tipped into the marshes. Napoleon needs every man he can get, because in the midst of the crisis, he has spotted an opportunity. Kostanovic's advance has caught him off guard, but Lake Garda separates him from the rest of the Austrian army. Napoleon will concentrate his forces against Kostanovic, beat him in battle, then pivot again to take on Wurmser.
Crazy.
The French divisions are soon on the move. Kostanovic's troops reach Lonato, But here they encounter Massena's vanguard. The Austrians come under heavy attack, and with French reinforcements arriving, they have to pull back. The next day, the French retake Brescia, along with most of their supplies, sick and wounded. Then, Napoleon catches a lucky break. Wurmser has been on Massena's heels, harrying his rear guard as far as Peschiera. But now he receives reports there are French forces massing between him and Mantua. Mantua is his priority, so he swings south, away from Kostanovic, towards a city Napoleon has already abandoned.
Wow.
By the time Wurmser realizes his error, it's too late. He has gifted Napoleon 24 crucial hours. A blunder, for which he will pay dearly.
Nothing is lost while courage remains. Napoleon to General Massena, 29th July 1796. Yeah, I mean, the opportunity for the Austrians was there to concentrate their forces to kind of, if they could get Napoleon in like a pincer movement, kind of trap him between two of their forces, and he just went south. Did he receive like bad info on purpose? Was it like something the French did, or was it just like the Austrians just didn't know Napoleon had abandoned and they just went south to Mantua? I wonder if it talks about it, that's cool. But if not, I wonder where that information came from, because the guy seemed very adamant that he had to go south to get Mantua, even though the French were long gone by then.
The 3rd of August sees confused fighting west of Lake Garda. One French brigade slips through the wooded ravines unnoticed, straight into Salo, causing havoc behind the Austrian lines. But the Austrians repel 3 attacks on Gavardo, and all seems to be going well until their own advance meets Massena's division at Lonato. Massena's counterattack is led by the 32nd Demi Brigade, which is becoming known as one of the Army of Italy's most feared units. "Bayonets only," Napoleon calls out, "and you, 32nd, maintain your glorious reputation."
I love to hear it. That's great.
The lead Austrian brigade is routed. Colonel Junot, though wounded 6 times, accepts their commander's surrender. Kostanovich's force has been mauled. Fearing for the rest of his command, and with no word from Wurmser, he decides he must march back around Lake Garda to rejoin the army. The same day, 15 miles to the south, General Augereau's division fights an aggressive rearguard action near Castiglione, keeping Wurmser at bay while Napoleon deals with Kostanovic. Augereau begins with a bold attack on General Liptay's vanguard, driving it back to high ground near Solferino. But here, Liptay receives steady reinforcements as the rest of the Austrian army begins to arrive. Augereau keeps up the pressure, preventing an Austrian advance. And though there's a late scare when enemy cavalry sweep around his left flank, they are unsupported and soon pull back. For Augereau and his men, it is a long day of heroic action against a superior force, one which Napoleon will never forget. 12 years later, as emperor, he will make Augereau Duke of Castiglione.
Nice.
And always remind his critics, he saved us that day.
What a guy.
Nevertheless, by nightfall, Augereau's division is at breaking point. "Our soldiers are exhausted from fatigue and hunger. If you don't send me reinforcements, I won't be able to hold out.
Okay.
Next morning, French troops renew the attack on Kostanovic and quickly discover he's beating a hasty retreat. A major disaster is narrowly avoided when 3 lost Austrian battalions stumble into Napoleon's headquarters at Lonato. They call on the general to surrender. Napoleon responds by loudly ordering his grenadiers and artillery into position, then demands that the Austrians surrender to him or be put to the sword.
Wow.
It's a bold bluff. Few of his troops are anywhere near. But the Austrians meekly lay down their arms.
Wow.
As Napoleon swings his army round to take on Wurmser, the Austrian must decide whether to stand his ground or fall back to a stronger line behind the Mincio River. He chooses to stay put. By engaging Napoleon, he hopes to buy time for Kostanovic to regroup and resume his advance, and for Mantua to be resupplied. His reasoning is sound, but his intelligence is out of date, and he's underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's forces will move.
Yep. Every time. For 8 days we have been in the saddle. We do not want to allow the enemy rest unless we have destroyed him. Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, as we see the speed of Napoleon's armies and the way he's able to administer them and get everything kind of in line. And also, it helps. Admittedly, it does help, apparently, that the Austrians were ill-prepared and, Wurmser, didn't have the type of intelligence network that he needed in terms of, like, scouting and stuff, because, as they were saying, he doesn't really know what's going on. He doesn't know that the other guy's fleeing, going back in the mountains. And, in hindsight, obviously we could all look back and say, okay, he made weird choices, or, choices that gave Napoleon too much time. Napoleon's already fast enough. Giving him more time is obviously just going to turn out worse for you. So, it is. I found that story though about the Austrians that kind of stumbled into Napoleon's headquarters there, and Napoleon didn't really have any armies around, and he just like bluffed him. It's like, yeah, if you don't surrender, I'm going to blow you apart with my cannon and my freaking bayonets, and I'll execute you. And they're like, okay, sorry, but we give up. That's pretty cool.
At dawn on the 5th of August, the Austrian army is 4 miles east of Castiglione, formed up in 2 lines. Its northern flank anchored on the village of Solferino, its southern flank on a well-fortified redoubt at Monte Medolano. Napoleon faces him with Massena's division in the north, Augereau's division in the centre, and Kilmain's cavalry in the south. He's also formed an elite unit of grenadiers and cavalry to be held back for the decisive moment. Napoleon doesn't seem to have much of an advantage.
Way less guns.
But he has 10,000 more troops converging rapidly on the battlefield. 5,000 under General Despinois, marching from Brescia. 5,000 more under General Fiorella, coming from the south. To buy time for these reinforcements to arrive, and to lure Wurmser out of position, Napoleon orders Massena and Augereau to attack. There is a short exchange of fire. Then the French begin a feigned retreat. The Austrians take the bait, some units advancing off the high ground, while Wurmser extends his right wing, looking to outflank Massena's division. Around 9 a.m., the sound of gunfire from the south alerts both sides to Fiorella's arrival, behind the Austrian left flank. Napoleon immediately orders Augereau and Massena to attack again, in earnest. Despinois' troops arrive to join the assault. But Napoleon has sprung his trap too early. Wurmser is not yet fully committed and reacts swiftly. He organizes a new line to fend off Fiorella and hurriedly recalls his right wing.
Wow. Good
But
job.
he cannot save the redoubt at Monte Medolano. Napoleon's aide-de-camp, Major Marmont, leads forward a battery to blast the position. His guns open a devastating cannonade, clearing the way for an attack. Around 10 a.m., the reserve grenadiers charge forward with bayonets fixed, sweeping the Austrians off the hill. Meanwhile, to the north, the 4th and 5th demi-brigades surge onto the Solferino heights and seize the redoubt before Pozzacatana. Carried forward by their momentum, they storm the Solferino tower and village beyond, the shaken enemy falling back in disarray. The Austrians are hard-pressed along the line, and now French cavalry and Fiorella's troops threaten to cut off their retreat. While Napoleon is active, energized, urging troops forward, Wurmser seems to go into shock. A French émigré serving with him recalled, "He watched without seeing anything, saying anything, hearing anything. This brave old man, his head covered with white hair, did not think anymore."
What an incredible quote. And one has to, I guess, ask that had he been more proactive, had Wurmser been more aware of his situation, he has experience and wisdom, but he had a potential opportunity to turn this battle in his favor. And it seems like, again, he doesn't have what is the right word for it? Napoleon seems to have a sort of confidence, right? He has a plan of attack, will be carried out, and he will be victorious. And if things go awry, he can change up and switch up and kind of make it so. Where this guy doesn't seem to have that, and maybe that's the genius of Napoleon. I guess we'll obviously we have a lot more videos. We'll find out more. But so far, it doesn't seem like anybody else has that sort of confidence. At least that he's faced. It looks like some of his generals and his commanders, Napoleon's commanders and stuff, they seem, like they're kind of like him in some regard, but the Austrians don't seem to be very confident in leadership, confident in their abilities. They don't. They do have some good stuff here and there. They do put up a fight, but they don't have near the amount of sort of zeal that the French do.
Finally, Wurmser orders a general retreat back across the Mincio River, covered by their cavalry and some late Austrian reinforcements. The French pursuit quickly peters out. After a week of forced marches in stifling heat, with little to eat or drink, Napoleon's men are close to collapse. But their general is content with what they have achieved.
Wow. The Austrian army has disappeared like a dream, and the Italy that it threatened is now quiet. Napoleon to the Directory. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and obviously judge the Austrian troops, on their courage or anything, because again, I've never been to war, and I suppose in this time, without the medical treatments we have today, injuries during war are probably a lot more fatal, just due to like infections and stuff. But it just seems like the Austrian army kind of doesn't have it, man. They just lack the pizzazz. I don't even know what the right word for it is. They just lack the motivation to do anything really, other than kind of just maintain status quo. So it isn't surprising to me that Napoleon would say something like this. I mean, from his point of view, it must seem like that, because he's kind of just walked all over him the entire time he's been in Italy so far.
Wurmser's army finds temporary refuge behind the Mincio River. But Napoleon immediately resumes the attack. Massena is sent north to relieve the French garrison at Peschiera and threaten Wurmser's line of retreat. The Austrian general has had enough. After ensuring the garrison of Mantua is fully resupplied and reinforced, he begins his withdrawal to the Tyrol to regroup and rethink. The French nip at his heels all the way. Napoleon has just endured his toughest challenge yet as an army commander. And though initially wrong-footed by his adversary, he's displayed brilliant flexibility and his usual energy to weather the crisis and then triumph.
Yep.
But Mantua remains the key to Italy. And while it stands unconquered, the Austrians will do everything in their power to save it. Wurmser will be back, and when he returns, he'll find himself on a collision course with Napoleon, as he launches his own attack on Austria itself.
Oh, nice.
Thanks again to Enlisted for sponsoring this.
Yeah, thank you to the sponsors for Epic History, helping them out. What a video, though. I mean,
a big thank you to PMF Productions.
Yep, thank you to these guys.
This series and charting Napoleon's movements across northern Italy. We highly recommend their YouTube channel, featuring their own detailed series on Napoleon's Italian campaigns.
Cool.
Which you can find by searching PMF Productions or using the link in our video description. Big thanks also to our old
History
collaborator,
History March.
for creating the.
It's awesome. Yeah, just to kind of sum up the video here. It just seems like there's not really much stopping Napoleon, really. I mean, even when he's outnumbered, even when he has less guns, less cannon, even when he has troops that are tired from marching, it's hot out, they're low on supplies, doesn't matter. It doesn't seem like it matters much. It doesn't play as big of a role as it would with maybe other commanders or other, generals, as we've seen with the Austrians. They had Wurmser, by all accounts, seemed like he had experience. It wasn't dumb, but he just didn't have that sort of decision making and tactical thought process. It almost seems like, and maybe this is a weird thing to say, but it almost seems like it almost seems like everybody's stuck in a old way of thinking, and Napoleon is the outlier. He's not, because the way he marches, the way he organizes, the way he sort of builds his tactical plans is not like it's different than what everybody else does. And obviously I think it's hard, as we see, it's really hard for other enemy commanders to get a gauge on it, to understand what's even happening. And then by that time, even if they do understand, by that time it's too late. There's nothing they can do. So I'm excited for the next one too. It seems like there's going to be a huge battle at Mantua, from what the narrator was going on about. And we'll see if the Austrians can put up a bigger fight. I'm expecting, if he does invade, or I guess when he does invade Austria, they put up if I'm hoping they put up a bigger fight to defend their home country. But yeah, this is a great video. It just speaks more to Napoleon earning the trust of his men, earning the accolades of the people who call him a brilliant commander and stuff like that. Especially now, now that we can look back in time and in hindsight and see the things he did and judge him on today's scale. And even today we're kind of in awe of it too. So that's awesome. I'm looking forward to the next one. I might record it today, or it'll be out either tonight, probably late at night, or early tomorrow morning, one of the two. But I want to thank everybody for stopping in. If you have any more information on any of the questions I had, please tell me. I love it when you guys comment, because then it helps me understand not only just Napoleon, but also helps me understand the world that Napoleon lives in. It's just, this time period again is unknown to me. I don't really know what's going on other than like U.S. history at the time. So we just don't learn that in school. Unfortunately, I know Americans, we get a lot of bad rap about not knowing world history. I understand. But this is kind of the way to do it, I think, in my opinion, is to learn from those who know, like Epic History, people in the comments, people who have studied this, people who maybe make it a hobby to learn. I love that. So thank you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.